Hey guys, it's Stigma, and today I kind of want to talk about this weird stigma that some artists have against other artists. Now, this isn't about artists getting into NFTs or artists getting into generative AI art. This is about artists who decide they'd rather go indie, full indie, or just get out of the industry and form something of their own. Generally speaking, a lot of artists are actually very supportive of their peers and acquaintances trying to make something of their own, trying to make it big on their own. Whether it's through their social media, or they decide to do their own courses, or they do Patreon or other forms of crowdfunding to be able to make a living to do what they want to do. However, there's another side that sees these artists as failures because they couldn't fit into the industry or they couldn't make it into the industry. Therefore, they are considered quote-unquote failures because they had to find some other way to use their skills. And this viewpoint is more prevalent against artists that don't have any industry experience. And surprisingly enough, this comes from other artists too, who happen to be working in the industry. Now, I think the notion is kind of silly, but I can actually understand where it comes from, why some artists think that way, and how the animation community needs to improve drastically. So if you want my opinion out of the way, I personally think that people should be making art or creative projects because they want to express. As someone who does animation, to express ideas with the use of animation. So when I first heard that there are other artists who are kind of very critical of other artists who decide to leave the industry and try to make something of their own and are very critical about it, I think it's a very tiresome boomer mindset. But then the more I think about it, I can kind of see where it comes from. I think to many artists in the industry, being able to finally land a gig in the industry means that you finally proved yourself that you belong in this big space where you can work with other like-minded people. Being a part of that shows that you can follow a group, you belong to a certain community, you have the skills to be able to keep up, whereas people who leave the industry or couldn't stay within the industry but had to do something of their own because they didn't really have any other choice at the time being, they're criticized because they couldn't fit right in. And from my observation within the animation community, and I'm mostly just talking about the LA animation industry because that's what I'm familiar with, it can be kind of tribal, where a lot of people use their career as their identity in the animation industry. Sometimes it's used as social points, weirdly enough. Like, I'll be seen differently to other animators who are just as talented as I am because I worked on certain productions that are quote-unquote prestigious. But what I'm trying to say is that a lot of people in the animation community in LA have this viewpoint where once you get a job in the industry in LA, you belong to this community. You've proved that you fit right into this community. And can you keep that up? Whereas if you decide to sort of venture into your own thing, you're kind of pushed aside unless you're pretty popular in the animation space. Now, another argument that I can see from a lot of people in the industry that they have against people who have become independently successful is that some of these people who become successful independently are kind of tone deaf to a lot of things with artistic careers or just conversations about it. Now, I'm not going to mention any names, but sometimes you'll hear a popular YouTuber or influencer artist talking about embracing AI and how they use it in their work. Maybe in some way they'll talk about how they're using it the right way because they are skilled artists. And it gets pushed back from artists who actually work in the industry that have their work suffered because of AI. Now, years ago, there was an artist and animator who tried to get 50% of my sales of my courses by just sharing it or advertising it, even though I made this course all by myself. And their negotiation was that because they had 100K subscribers more than I did at the time, and that it would have a better reach according to them. Now, the thing is, I don't blame this artist or YouTuber thinking that way, because I can also understand that this person lives the YouTuber life, this YouTuber space, where subscriber count is apparently a commodity. So I think the critique of a lot of independent artists who don't work in the quote-unquote workspace or industry or studio can be out of touch to what's important or what's considered etiquette. And sometimes when you hear drama about some YouTuber or art influencer like having some controversy, people are going to point out that this individual has never really worked for the industry. They just happen to do their own thing. So they don't, or they really shouldn't represent the overall body or voice of artists who do work in the industry or who just work in this career overall. Like, imagine you have a high influencing artist that says, hey, AI is great, but they have never really worked with other people or in the industry, where AI generative art is very controversial. I can see why a lot of artists who are knee deep into the industry or studio work or in the career see these outside artists as different. I think part of the stigma too is that there's a sense of jealousy sometimes with a lot of these people who are in the industry, and they're in the industry because they prove themselves by, let's say, playing the rules, following directions, proving that they can fit in and belong. And then you get someone out there who decides to, let's say, not follow the rules or do stuff that's against your own paradigms and beliefs, and they're kicking ass out there doing the thing that you were told not to touch or do ever. So I do want to talk a bit about myself. I did everything I could to land a job in the industry. Like back then, I wanted to work for companies like Disney, DreamWorks, and Pixar. My work back then represented that, but that also means staying away from the things I was told to stay away from, despite whether I liked them or not. This could be anime, this could be independent, starting your own thing, not having to follow the norm. And now I see my friends who did their own thing now reap the benefits from the hard work that they did doing their own thing. And sure, I could criticize that they're not doing it the right way, they're not doing it the industry way or the way that I was enforced, but at the end of the day, they're making a thing that works. And seeing them utilize the things that I was told to stay away from makes me a bit more resentful for doing that to myself. So here's the thing, and I can only speak in the animation world. Like, a lot of us got into animation because we love the medium, we love telling stories with it, we love making it. My time in the industry, I generally enjoyed it. There were lots of ups and downs, but one thing that I can fully agree with is that I learned about myself, I learned about the craft, and I learned a lot of things from the industry that I could take with me for my own work. But the industry has made a lot of us kind of jaded because sometimes a lot of us were mistreated by these studios or the people in it, or a lot of us were pushed aside. Sometimes we had to deal with, studio politics or community politics that we didn't really asked to be involved with. You learn in the industry that there's a lot of luck factor. Like, you may be in a project, it gets canceled, but another project out there doesn't get canceled, and when that becomes big, a lot of people reap the benefits from it. So the thing with like industry work and things like that, there's a lot of circumstances that are out of your control. Now, going into like independent, like let's say crowdfunding or Patreon or doing your own thing, you have a lot of things that you have better control of. It's just a much tougher road. And I personally think if we want to make the world of independent animation succeed, we can't necessarily follow the studio setup or the industry setup, and the people who leave those places or decide to do their own thing are the ones who are going to pave that road. Now, part of the reason why I don't really want to make videos about this is how you get into the industry or this is what's acceptable in the industry or just industry talk all the time is that everyone's relationship to the industry is going to be different. I do want to focus more on, just creating stuff, talking about making stuff, learning things about animation, discovering things about animation, and just having conversations about artistic growth. So the thing is that I've always seen art and animation as a tool to express, to tell stories, to tell jokes. And if you can find a way to make it possible where you can do your own thing with complete control without having to depend on, let's say, this industry, then more power to you. I think whether you're pursuing to work in the industry or to become an independent artist, I think it's a good idea to have an open conversation with a lot of different artists to see how they view certain things and topics rather than staying in your own bubble. A thing that I'm trying to get into the mindset of, and maybe this is kind of me like expressing some advice that I'm trying to follow, is instead of trying to make things because it looks cool to the animation industry or you're kind of just a fan of animation, like try thinking more about the things that you want to say with it, the ideas you want to express. Find ways to make it doable, keep them short, allow people to see glimpses of your voice, and I guess style. If it wasn't for the industry, what would you be doing? And I think because of the terrible state of the animation industry now, more people are open to this type of conversation. Anyways, that's all. Bye. Interested in learning hand-drawn animation or learning how to finish an animated shot from beginning to end? Have a look at the store where you'll find the complete introduction to 2D animation video course, tutorials, and other resources. Learn classical animation approaches, drawing, lectures, techniques, and other process videos. Visit the store through the link in the description below.